One day the oceans will vanish not because we drain them with our cities and machines, but because the sun itself will change, and everything we know will be swallowed by silence. It feels impossible to imagine. The sea seems eternal. Waves crash with such confidence, tides return with such discipline, rain falls with such persistence that the cycle of water feels unbreakable. And yet hidden in the fabric of time, the ending of this story already waits. The ocean, that great blue mirror of the sky, is not forever. Its fate is written in fire, in the slow pulse of the star above us. Think of the sun for a moment. To us, it is warmth, light, and rhythm. It rises every morning and sinks every evening. It guides the growing of crops and the migrations of animals. It fills our skies with color painting, pink dawns, and amber dusks. To ancient people, it was more than just a star. It was a god, the great giver of life. Every heartbeat you have ever felt, every breath you have ever taken, owes something to the steady burning of the Sunday. And yet what sustains us will one day destroy us. The life-giver is also the destroyer, the parent, that eventually becomes the reason for its child's end. Humanity lives on borrowed time. It does not always feel that way because the clock we measure ourselves against is so immense, so slow, so vast, that it becomes invisible. Our lives pass like sparks in the wind compared to the ages of stars. But the clock is ticking all the same. Each sunrise is not just a beginning, it is also a reminder of endings still to come. We are walking on the sands of a cosmic hourglass, and the grains are still falling even if we cannot hear them. Imagine standing on the shore. The air is filled with the sound of surf rolling in endless rhythm. Foam gathers at your feet, and gathers again, and retreats again as though the ocean is breathing. This rhythm feels timeless, older than memory, older than civilization. It feels as though it will never stop. And yet, like all songs, it has an ending. One day the music will fade. The ocean's breath will falter. The waves will fall silent. The oceans are temporary, though they do not appear that way. They are fragile dancers under the light of the sun. Their movements delicate, their existence precarious. What we take for permanence is in truth an illusion created by our short view of time. To us, a century feels like an eternity. To the earth, it is barely a blink. To the sun, it is less than a sigh. The seas that we assume will outlast us are already set on a path toward disappearance. And the hand that pushes them is the same hand that gave them life. Take a moment to let that idea sink in. The sun is not a fixed presence in the sky. It is not an immortal guardian. It is a living thing, a star burning its fuel, changing in its own slow heartbeat. Like all living things, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Right now it sits in its middle years, stable, calm, and generous. But time will carry it forward, as time always does, and eventually its calm will give way to chaos. What happens when it begins to age? What happens when the balance that makes Earth gentle and blue tips into something else entirely? When we think of the ocean, we imagine endurance. The water we touch today is the same water that dinosaurs once swam, in the same water that filled the earliest seas when life first flickered into being. Water feels timeless because it cycles. It falls as rain, it runs in rivers, it swells in seas, it rises as vapor, and then it falls again. Nothing seems lost, and yet the cycle is not infinite. There is a final chapter hidden far in the distance, where the water no longer returns. This thought creates a strange dissonance. We are taught to see the ocean as eternal as the background stage on which life performs, and yet the stage itself is fragile. Without it, there is no performance, no actors, no story at all. The idea that the oceans could vanish feels almost like a betrayal, as though the universe has been hiding a cruel secret behind the illusion of constancy. But perhaps it is not cruelty. Perhaps it is simply the truth of cycles that stretch longer than our minds can grasp. The sun gives Earth warmth, but it is also the force that will one day strip it bare. Oceans boil, atmospheres drift into space, and the blue jewel of the solar system fades into a dry husk. If the sun could speak, perhaps it would say, "I gave you everything, and now I take it back." To dwell on this is to confront our own fragility. The sun's lifespan dwarfs ours, yet it too is finite. It too is bound by the same law that binds us, the law of impermanence. Nothing in the cosmos is forever. Stars die, galaxies fade. Even the universe itself may one day cool into silence. Against such vastness, our lives may seem insignificant, as brief as the foam on the crest of a wave. And yet there is something strangely comforting in knowing that we share the same fate as the stars themselves. The sun is our ancestor, and like us, it too must age, transform, and eventually die. When you think of the sun as mortal, it changes the way you see the present. The golden light falling through your window is not just light, it is the slow exhalation of a star that is giving its life away. Every warm breeze that brushes your skin is powered by nuclear fire deep in the sun's core, a fire that cannot last forever. Every drop of ocean water that glitters in the sunlight is shimmering because of a balance that will not endure. To be alive now in this brief window where the seas are full and the sun is kind is to occupy a moment of staggering rarity. This then is the doorway into dusk. To walk through it is to leave behind the illusion of eternity and face the truth of endings. The sun, our gentle companion, is not eternal. The oceans, our great mirror, are not eternal. We too are not eternal. And yet in facing this, something remarkable happens. Endings do not strip life of meaning. They give life meaning. A sunset is beautiful precisely because it does not last. A wave is beautiful precisely because it breaks and disappears. The ocean is beautiful precisely because one day it will fade away. And so the stage is set. The question lingers like a shadow at the edge of thought. If the sun is not eternal, if the oceans are not eternal, if even the world we know will someday vanish, what happens when the great heart of our star slows? How does the end of the sun become the end of the seas? To answer that, to understand how oceans die, we must first understand the star that warms them. At first glance, the sun feels like a permanent fixture. It rises every morning with absolute certainty, as though nothing could ever threaten its place in the sky. To look at it is to see stability, constancy, endurance. For millennia, human beings built calendars, rituals, and entire civilizations around its daily rhythm. The sun was worshipped because it seemed immune to time. It always came back. It never aged, never dimmed, never faltered. And yet hidden within its radiant heart there is a clock. A clock so vast and so slow that our short lives cannot hear its ticking. A clock powered not by gears or pendulums, but by nuclear fire. This hidden clock is what binds the sun to the same rule that governs us all. Nothing lasts forever. Stars, like people, have life cycles. They are born, they grow, they shine, they weaken, and eventually they die. The sun is no exception. Its fire burns with such power that it sustains an entire planet, and yet even this colossal engine is not eternal. The clock is already running. Deep inside the sun's blazing heart, a process unfolds that is both simple and profoundly mysterious. Hydrogen, the lightest and most common element in the universe, is being squeezed by unimaginable pressure and heat. At temperatures of millions of degrees, hydrogen atoms are forced so close together that they fuse, becoming helium. In this act of fusion, a tiny portion of mass is lost, transformed directly into energy. That energy becomes the sunlight that warms your face, the light that feeds the trees, the fire that drives the winds and the tides. It sounds almost magical, and in a way it is. The sun is a giant alchemist, turning one element into another, transforming invisible mass into radiant energy. It has been doing this for billions of years, tirelessly, endlessly. Every ray of sunlight that has ever touched Earth is born from this quiet miracle of physics. But like all miracles, it comes with a limit. The supply of hydrogen is not infinite. The candle is burning. The fuel is running out. To understand the magnitude of this, imagine holding a candle in a dark room. It flickers, it glows, it illuminates everything around it. In that moment, the candle feels like it will last forever because you are not watching the wax melt second by second. Yet if you return after an hour, the candle is shorter, and after enough hours it is gone. The sun is the same, except its candle is vast, and it's burning incomprehensibly slow. But the principle remains. The sun looks timeless, yet it is not. Astronomers estimate that the sun is roughly halfway through its main sequence, which is the most stable part of a star's life. It is a middle-aged star, steady and reliable, not young and volatile, not old and fading, but balanced in its prime. It has already burned for about 4.6 billion years, and it will continue for another 5 billion before change overtakes it. To us, billions of years are so immense that they might as well be infinite. But in cosmic terms, the sun is not eternal. It is a clock that has been ticking since the moment it was born, and it is a clock that will one day strike its final hour. Every sunrise carries this hidden truth. When the first golden light spills across the horizon, it is not just the start of another day. It is also the continuation of a countdown. Each photon that travels from the sun to Earth represents a tiny piece of the sun's life, a fragment of its fuel that has been spent. The warmth on your skin, the light in your window, the sparkle on the waves. These are the gifts of a star slowly burning itself away. Take a moment to reflect on that. The sun feels generous, endlessly giving. But it gives by destroying itself, by consuming its own body, and transforming it into light. Every act of warmth is also an act of loss. The sun does not simply shine. It sacrifices itself so that Earth can live. In a way, every flower, every forest, every living creature is sustained by this sacrifice. Life is written into the slow unraveling of a star. There is something humbling in this perspective. The sun is unimaginably powerful, and yet its story is bound by the same principle as ours. To exist is to burn, to shine, and eventually to fade. Endings are not accidents. They are part of the very fabric of existence. The sun's stability is not a promise of eternity, but a temporary balance, as fragile in its way as a heartbeat. This is not meant to inspire fear, but wonder. To know that the sun has already spent half of its life is to feel a deeper connection to it. We are children of a middle-aged star. The warmth we feel, the oceans that swell and retreat, the blue skies that open above us all, exist within this middle chapter. We are living in the calm before the storm, in the quiet pause before the transformations of age take hold. And yet there is a haunting beauty in realizing that the sun's gift is temporary. Permanence is an illusion, and that illusion often blinds us to the miracle of the present. The very fact that the sun will one day die makes its current glow more precious. The very fact that oceans will one day fade makes the sound of waves more sacred. Endings illuminate beginnings, just as shadows reveal the light. If you could step outside of time and look at the sun's entire life from birth to death, you would see it as a grand arc, like a mountain rising and falling. We are standing halfway up the slope, basking in its strength, unaware of how high the peak will climb or how suddenly the descent will come. We live in the middle, and the middle is both comforting and fragile. Every sunrise, then, is not just a symbol of renewal. It is also a reminder that the renewal is temporary, that the clock is moving forward, that nothing lasts forever. When the sun sets, it feels like the day has ended. But in truth, it is not just the day. It is the star itself inching closer to its inevitable transformation. And so the sun continues burning hydrogen into helium, ticking away its invisible hours. It will not change tomorrow, or next year, or in our lifetimes, or even in the lifetimes of our distant descendants. But time is patient, and time never stops. The thought leads us to the next question, the one that stretches beyond the comfort of the present. If the sun is a clock, and if it is halfway through its life, then what happens when the clock ticks forward? What happens when the fuel begins to run low, when the balance tips, when stability collapses into change? The answer is extraordinary and terrifying. For when the sun grows old, it will not grow smaller, but larger. It will begin to swell its heart, burning hotter, its outer layers expanding outward into space. The gentle star of today will become a red giant, a monstrous presence capable of swallowing entire worlds. And so, with the sun's hidden clock ticking quietly onward, we are drawn to the next chapter. What does it mean for Earth when its star begins to grow? For billions of years, the sun has been calm, steady, and dependable. It has risen over mountains, glimmered across oceans, and shone through the eyes of countless generations without faltering. To us, it feels eternal, a companion that will never abandon its role. But stars, like all living things, carry within them the seeds of transformation. The serene golden orb that cradles Earth will not always remain the same. One day, the calm star we know will become something monstrous. The thought is unsettling. When we look up at the sun, it appears unchanging. Its light is always warm, its size always constant, its presence always reassuring. Yet inside, deep in its core, slow changes are accumulating. Hydrogen is being spent, helium is building up, and the balance that has held for billions of years will begin to tip. When enough time has passed, the sun will enter a new phase of its life. A phase where its calm is shattered, and its nature distorted into something unrecognizable. The star that once looked like a gentle guardian will awaken as a red giant. Imagine the sky billions of years from now. The sun begins to grow, not slightly, not subtly, but monstrously. Its outer layers swell, expanding outward, until the sun itself is hundreds of times larger than it is today. The star that once fit neatly into a human hand, stretched against the horizon, will fill nearly the entire sky. At its peak, it may engulf the orbits of Mercury and Venus entirely. Earth, the third planet, may or may not be consumed. The details are uncertain, but the outcome is the same. Whether swallowed whole or left dangling on the edge of survival, Earth will be scorched beyond recognition. The golden light of today will no longer exist. The sun will glow a deep crimson, its outer layers stretched thin, its surface cooler, but its reach unimaginably greater. What we now call warmth will become suffocation. The gentle, life-giving rays will transform into a furnace that burns the very planet it once nourished. The air will sear, the ground will crack, and the oceans will boil. Not fade, not retreat, but violently erupt into steam until nothing remains but a barren, smoking husk. Pause for a moment and imagine that. The same waves you hear on a quiet evening, the same tides that lap against the shore rising up into a sky, heavy with steam vanishing into nothingness under a sun that has grown too large, too hot, too close. It is not a slow disappearance now, but a brutal boiling, a final erasure of all the blue that once defined Earth. The ocean cradle of life becomes the steam of death. This vision of the red giant sun is both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Terrifying because it reminds us that Earth's sanctuary is fragile. Awe-inspiring because it shows us the raw, unstoppable power of stars. The sun is not malicious. It does not grow in anger or rage. It grows because that is what stars do when their fuel shifts, when balance gives way to instability. It is not cruelty that boils the oceans, but inevitability. In that inevitability lies a profound truth. The sun's transformation into a red giant is not an accident. It is written into its very nature. The same process that gave us warmth, light, and life is also the process that will destroy us. In physics, there is no difference between the two. Creation and destruction are not opposites but stages of the same cycle. Life flourishes because the sun burns hydrogen, and death comes when hydrogen is gone. To exist under the sun is to live under a clock that always runs forward. The image of a red giant looming over Earth challenges our sense of scale. Today the sun is immense, already vast beyond comprehension. Yet as a red giant it will swell to nearly 200 million kilometers across. If the sun were placed where it is now, in its red giant phase, its edge could stretch past the orbit of Earth. The star that once seemed like a small disk in the sky will become a colossal wall of fire, so large that Earth itself would seem like a tiny ember circling its edge. What would the sky look like in such a time? Not blue, not open, but consumed by fire. The sun would dominate everything, turning day into an endless crimson glow. There would be no true night, no stars visible, only the suffocating presence of a star that had grown too large. The sky would be filled with storms of steam, winds of unimaginable force as Earth's atmosphere unraveled. And yet, even in this nightmare vision, there is beauty. The red giant sun would cast colors across the planet, unlike anything we know. Mountains would glow as though carved from ember. Valleys would shimmer in endless twilight. The oceans, as they boiled away, would send columns of vapor into the sky that shimmered with the refracted light of a dying world. It would be terrifying, yes, but also strangely magnificent. The end of the Earth would be written not in silence, but in spectacle. There is a haunting paradox in imagining this transformation. The same sun that allowed seas to form that nurtured life that inspired poets and painters with its golden light becomes the force that erases all of it. The parent turns destroyer. The giver becomes taker. Yet it is not betrayal, only continuity. The sun has always been both life and death, both gift and warning. Its beauty lies in the fact that it cannot be separated from either role. Perhaps the most unsettling thought is this: the Earth itself may survive, at least as a rock, even as life and oceans perish. If Earth is not consumed outright, it will remain as a scorched husk, circling the swollen star, stripped of air, water, and memory. A planet that once bloomed with forests and whispered with waves will orbit silently, forgotten, nothing more than a cinder of what once was. To us, such a fate feels catastrophic, tragic, unbearable. But to the universe, it is simply the natural order. Stars swell, planets burn, oceans boil, and still the cosmos continues. There is no tragedy in the eyes of physics, only transformation. Our fear comes from our intimacy with Earth, our love of its seas and skies. To us, the boiling away of the ocean is not just science, it is the end of our home, the silencing of everything familiar. And yet knowing this fate does not mean despair. Instead, it invites us to cherish what exists now. The warmth of the sun on your skin, the glimmer of light across the water, the quiet pulse of waves on a beach, all of these are temporary gifts. Their fragility makes them precious. To imagine the red giant sun is not just to confront loss, but to be reminded of presence. This is why science, even when it speaks of endings, can feel like poetry. To learn that the sun will one day boil the oceans is not to strip life of meaning, but to deepen it. The very act of knowing this truth makes the current ocean more miraculous, the current sky more luminous, the current sun more beloved. For we are alive in the time before the transformation, in the rare chapter when Earth is still blue. The calm star will awaken, and when it does, Earth will burn. The oceans will vanish not into memory but into steam. The planet will be remade under a crimson sky, and though this will not happen for billions of years, the story is already written in the sun's heart. The clock ticks forward, and when its time comes, the gentle warmth we know will become a cosmic furnace. But before that final boiling, before the violent loss of the seas, there will be signs small and subtle that the end is approaching. The oceans will begin to betray whispers of change long before their final vanishing, and it is there in those subtle signs that our journey continues. The death of oceans will not arrive as a single cataclysm, a sudden vanishing that shocks the earth in an instant. It will arrive as a whisper, slow and steady, a thief that works quietly while no one is watching. When people imagine the end of the seas, they picture a violent boiling under a swollen red sun waves exploding into steam in a matter of days. But in truth, the first stages of loss will come far earlier, subtle and deceptive. They will creep across centuries and millennia, long before the sun reaches its monstrous final form. The sun in its middle age does not remain perfectly stable. With every passing 100 million years, it grows slightly brighter. To human eyes, this change is invisible. To civilizations, even to the rise and fall of empires, the sun appears fixed. But the increase in brightness, though glacially slow, accumulates. A fraction of a percent becomes a full percent, and a percent becomes several. With that brightness comes more energy, more heat, more stress on the fragile balance that allows oceans to exist. Today, Earth's seas are kept in harmony by the dance between evaporation and rainfall. The sun warms the surface, water rises into the atmosphere, clouds form rainfalls, and the cycle repeats. For billions of years, this balance has persisted, shifting and swaying, but never breaking. Yet as the sun grows stronger, the scale tips. More water rises than falls, more heat is trapped than released, and the air begins to drink the oceans more greedily than it can give back. At first, the change would be subtle. A few extra drops vanishing from the surface of a lake, a slightly thicker haze in the summer sky, storms that seem just a little more intense, just a little more frequent. No one would notice. Entire civilizations could rise and fall while the seas were shrinking so slowly that the difference could only be measured by instruments. The ocean would still look infinite to human eyes, still stretch across the horizon, still roar with waves and tides. Yet beneath the illusion of constancy, the theft would continue. Imagine walking along a familiar beach in this distant age. The shoreline no longer meets where it once did. The waterline has retreated a few meters, then a few dozen, then perhaps a kilometer over the course of centuries. At first it might be attributed to natural cycles, to tides, to shifting sands. But as generations pass, the pattern becomes undeniable. The ocean is shrinking, slipping away, retreating like a tide that will never return. The air, meanwhile, grows heavy. Water vapor, once a delicate and balanced component of the atmosphere, becomes abundant. The sky begins to thicken, with moisture turning blue horizons into hazy domes. Sunlight filters through this veil differently, casting the world in a muted glow. Days become hotter, nights become less cool. The world begins to feel less like the home we know, and more like a greenhouse left too long in the sun. This transformation has a quiet cruelty. Oceans do not simply vanish into the sky, they become trapped there. The vapor that rises, lingers, thickens, presses down. Breathing in such an atmosphere would feel different, as though the air itself were weighted. The sound of rain would change as well. Showers might become more violent, more erratic, falling in bursts rather than rhythms. And yet, no matter how much rain fell, it could never replace what had been lost. The cycle has been broken. The balance is gone. Deserts would expand, stretching their boundaries outward into lands that were once fertile. Grasslands would dry into dust. Rivers would wither. Lakes would shrink into patches of mud. The heart of continents would feel the change, first farthest from the coasts and most vulnerable to a shifting climate. But eventually even the seas themselves would surrender. The vast Pacific would pull back from its shores, the Atlantic would draw inward, the Indian Ocean would thin. Blue would give way to brown, and coastlines that once defined nations would dissolve into barren plains. Pause here for a moment and imagine the silence of such a world. No more waves striking rocks. No more endless crashing that has echoed across Earth since its birth. The sound of the ocean, that constant background music of the planet, would grow quieter each century until it faded into nothing. The heartbeat of the Earth would stop, not with a violent crack, but with a slow hush. The haunting part is not the final boiling, but this creeping disappearance. To live in such a world would be to feel as though the planet itself were being unstitched one thread at a time. A person might never notice it in their own lifetime. But if you could stand across thousands of years and watch the seas retreat frame by frame, the effect would be devastating. It would be as though the Earth were slowly exhaling its last breath, never to inhale again. This slow evaporation has profound meaning. It reminds us that endings do not always come as explosions or sudden collapses. Sometimes they come quietly, invisibly, through gradual change. And perhaps that is the more haunting truth. Violence is easy to notice. Gradual unraveling slips past our attention until it is too late. The end of oceans is not only written in the future, it is foreshadowed by the smallest of shifts. There is another layer to this story. Water is not simply water, it is life. It shapes ecosystems, cultures, histories. The slow draining of the seas would not only transform the planet's climate, it would transform the meaning of existence. How would humanity respond to a world where coasts vanish, where islands disappear, where seas become deserts? Entire mythologies, economies, and ways of life would dissolve alongside the waters. The ocean is not only a physical entity, it is a symbol, a dream, a rhythm in our collective imagination. Its loss is more than environmental, it is existential. To think of Earth as a place without oceans is to confront a world almost unrecognizable. The planet we call the Blue Planet would no longer wear its title. Seen from space, Earth would no longer shine with deep sapphire hues, but with dusty browns and greys. The shimmering reflection of sunlight on waves, that dazzling sparkle visible even from orbit, would vanish. Earth would no longer be a jewel, but a husk. And yet, even this haunting vision has beauty. There is something strangely poetic about the oceans rising into the air, merging with the sky, blurring the line between sea and heaven. The world would be wrapped in its own breath, the ocean not gone but transformed. Water that once lapped at shores would now drift above mountains, shimmering in the atmosphere, scattering sunlight into strange and surreal colors. But beauty cannot disguise the truth. This path ends in silence, in emptiness, in thirst. The oceans do not migrate forever. They are on a one-way journey from sea to sky to space. Once they leave the surface, their return becomes impossible. What begins as a slow theft becomes a permanent exile. So we arrive at the threshold of the next mystery. If the oceans rise into the sky, if they become vapor and drift into the air, where do they go? Do they stay? Do they escape? What is the final resting place of all that water, all that memory, all that life? To find out, we must follow the vapor upward into the heavy skies of Earth's far future. For the oceans do not die quietly. They climb into the heavens, searching for escape. The oceans do not vanish in an instant. They do not roar upward in a single violent exhalation, leaving behind a naked, desolate world. Instead, they migrate. Quietly and visibly, the waters climb drop by drop, molecule by molecule, carried by sunlight into the vastness above. It is not a disappearance, but a relocation, a strange transformation in which the seas we once walked beside begin to live in the sky. Imagine standing at the edge of a future Earth centuries after the slow retreat of the coasts has begun. The ocean is still there, but smaller, pulled back from the land, its surface restless with heat. Every wave that rises throws more into the air than it gives back. Each breath of wind carries away vapor that will never truly return. If you close your eyes, you might hear the ocean whispering, not just as waves, but as mist and haze rising overhead. It is the sound of the sea becoming the sky. The atmosphere, once thin and clear, begins to change. What was once a delicate balance of gases becomes swollen with water vapor. The sky thickens heavy and saturated, as though the very heavens are sweating. Clouds become denser, larger, and more permanent. The light of the sun no longer pours through easily. Instead, it filters through layers of haze, scattering into strange hues, painting the earth in colors it has never known. Mornings shimmer in a pale gold that feels oppressive rather than comforting. Midday burns with a washed-out glare that presses against the skin. Even twilight becomes surreal, with sunsets stretching longer, smeared across a sky that struggles to release its heat. The transformation of the sky into a home for the oceans is not merely visual, it is visceral. The air itself becomes heavy. Each breath draws in more water vapor, creating the sensation of dampness in the lungs. Imagine walking across a humid summer day, the kind that feels suffocating when even in the shade one cannot escape the weight of the air. Now magnify that sensation not for hours or days, but forever. Every step is slowed, every movement is drenched in sweat, every breath feels like drinking the atmosphere. To live on this future Earth would be to exist within a steam bath that never ends. This migration of the oceans into the sky creates a runaway effect. The more water vapor rises, the more heat is trapped. And the more heat is trapped, the faster evaporation occurs. It is a spiral, an unstoppable feedback loop. Earth begins to cook itself under its own breath. The oceans, instead of cooling the planet, become its captors, wrapping the globe in a dense cloak that holds in every photon of heat. What was once a world of balance turns into a furnace disguised as a greenhouse. The thought alone is unsettling. For so long the ocean has represented coolness, vastness, and relief. It is where life goes to escape the heat of the land, to find refuge in its depths. To imagine that same water turning against us, rising into the air, to suffocate rather than soothe, is to witness the betrayal of Earth's oldest friend. The seas are not leaving in silence. They are transforming into a force of pressure and heat, reshaping the very breath of the world. Philosophically, this raises a haunting paradox. The very thing that sustains us, water, becomes the thing that overwhelms us. Too little, and we thirst. Too much, and we drown. In this future, drowning does not mean being submerged in liquid, but suffocated by vapor. Breathing itself becomes an act of resistance. The difference between air and water collapses. In such a world, to exist is to feel perpetually on the edge of being submerged. It is worth pausing here in this vision to imagine what daily life would feel like in such a place. If humanity or any form of intelligence remains on Earth during these stages, existence would be radically altered. Technology would have to battle against the sky itself. Homes would need to be sealed and cooled. Machines would work endlessly to fight against humidity, and survival would mean constantly waging war against the air. The natural world as we know it would fade. Forests would wither. Animals would struggle to cool themselves. Ecosystems built on delicate cycles of rainfall and evaporation would collapse, replaced by a suffocating uniformity of heat. The oceans that once served as boundaries would instead loom over every horizon, not as water you could see, but as vapor pressing down from above. The planet would no longer be divided into land and sea. It would become one vast steaming environment, a global swamp suspended between liquid and gas. Earth would resemble a world we no longer recognize. It would look less like our blue jewel and more like Venus, shrouded in clouds that choke and conceal where the sun is seen only through a distorted haze. But there is something strangely poetic in this transformation too. The seas in their migration are not gone. They are present everywhere. In every drop of sweat on the skin, in every bead of condensation on a window, in every swollen cloud looming overhead, the ocean lives on. It is no longer confined to the horizon, no longer something we visit. It is everywhere, saturating the very breath of the planet. The sky itself becomes a mirror of the sea, a rolling ocean above us instead of beside us. This vision is beautiful and terrifying at once. To look up would be to look into a vast, endless ocean that you cannot sail, cannot swim, cannot escape. An ocean that has no surface, only thickness. An ocean that surrounds you even when you stand on the driest land. The boundary between below and above collapses. The Earth becomes a water world without water, a paradox of presence and absence. Scientists call this the moist greenhouse effect, a stage in planetary evolution where water vapor dominates the atmosphere, sealing in heat and ensuring that oceans can no longer return to their liquid state. It is a phase that marks the beginning of the true end. For once the water is in the sky, it is only a matter of time before it escapes altogether. This inevitability makes the vision all the more haunting. We live today in a world where the ocean and sky are separate, where the cycle of evaporation and rainfall is balanced. But baked into this harmony is an expiration date. The balance is temporary, fragile, and already tilting. The skies we love, the blue above us, will not remain so forever. They will thicken, darken, and weigh down upon the world. So we are left with a question. If the seas migrate into the heavens, do they remain there? Does the sky hold them forever, keeping Earth wrapped in its heavy cloak? Or does even the sky eventually betray the oceans, releasing them into the void beyond? The answer lies not in the seas themselves, but in the hunger of the Sunday. For as powerful as the atmosphere is even, it has limits. And slowly, inevitably, it will no longer be able to contain what the sun insists on destroying. There is a limit to what the sky can hold. A swollen atmosphere, thick with vapor, is still only a container, and every container has its cracks. The oceans that climbed into the heavens cannot linger there forever. Under the unrelenting gaze of the sun, even the sky itself begins to betray the seas. Water in its pure form seems so permanent. We drink it, swim in it, boil it, freeze it. We imagine it as indestructible, always shifting shapes but never truly lost. Yet in the crucible of a brightening sun, water reveals its fragility. It is not invincible. It is not eternal. It can be broken apart, unmade into its most basic pieces. The process is quiet, invisible, and merciless. Radiation from the sun, fierce and unyielding tears at the molecules of vapor that now dominate Earth's atmosphere. Each molecule of water, so simple and familiar, 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen, becomes vulnerable to the onslaught of photons and particles streaming outward from the star. Slowly, inevitably, bonds snap. The water we once trusted as the foundation of life splits into its elements. Oxygen, the heavier of the two, lingers near Earth for a time, clinging to the gravity that still holds sway. But hydrogen, small and light, is different. It is so light that the pull of Earth cannot contain it. Once released, it drifts upward, escaping the sky, carried off by solar winds into the dark silence of space. It is an exhalation the planet cannot take back. This is not evaporation in the ordinary sense. It is not the familiar cycle of water lifting into the air only to fall again as rain. This is a deeper unraveling, a permanent dismantling. The oceans do not simply vanish, they leak away atom by atom into the void. It is the slow bleeding of a planet. Pause for a moment and imagine this loss not as chemistry but as grief. The oceans are more than water. They are voices, songs, histories. They are the memory of every creature that has ever swum, every tide that has ever kissed the shore. To lose them is not only to lose liquid, it is to lose identity. And here in this future Earth, that identity is not only diminished, it is scattered across the solar wind, drifting invisibly into space, never to return. This slow dispersal carries a kind of cosmic melancholy. Picture the hydrogen that once belonged to a wave off the coast of a forgotten continent, now floating alone between planets, indistinguishable from the ancient atoms forged in the Big Bang. What was once part of Earth's heart, part of its body, becomes indistinct in the endless ocean of the universe. Earth does not simply dry up, it dissolves into the cosmos. Scientifically, the process is inevitable. Astronomers call it hydrodynamic escape. It is the fate of any world that holds water too close to an increasingly violent star. Venus may have once had oceans, perhaps shallow seas that shimmered under a gentler sun billions of years ago. But Venus is now a furnace wrapped in thick carbon dioxide, a place where water has been absent for eons. Its oceans did not vanish suddenly. They leaked away atom by atom until the sky could no longer remember them. Earth is following the same trajectory, though on a different timescale. The sun, in its middle age, grows brighter with every passing eon. The atmosphere thickens with vapor. Radiation splits the molecules. Hydrogen escapes. The process is slow, almost invisible to the human eye, but relentless. Over millions of years, the trickle becomes a flood, not of liquid, but of loss. To think of Earth bleeding into space is to confront a strange inversion. We often imagine the universe feeding worlds, stars, nourishing planets, comets, delivering water and organics to young surfaces. Life emerges because the cosmos gives. But here the cosmos takes. Earth becomes the giver not of life, but of atoms. Its most precious substance, the element that makes rivers sing and cells awaken, is stolen by the void. The planet becomes not a cradle, but a donor to the emptiness around it. The philosophical weight of this truth presses heavily. We are used to seeing endings as dramatic, catastrophic impacts, sudden extinctions, violent eruptions. But the death of Earth's oceans is not loud. It is patient, delicate, almost tender in its cruelty. There are no tidal waves announcing the end, no singular storm to mark the last flood. Instead, the seas fade like breath on a mirror, dissolving into nothingness, leaving behind silence. What would it mean for those who might witness the early stages of this unraveling? Imagine a future intelligence, perhaps human, perhaps something descended from us, gazing at the night sky and knowing that the water it drinks today will not remain here tomorrow. To drink in such an age would be to borrow against a debt that can never be repaid. Every sip would be temporary, every drop a reminder of impermanence. To live in that world would be to feel the planet slipping through your fingers, not just metaphorically, but literally. And what of the oxygen that remains behind? At first, one might imagine it offering a gift air to breathe, fire to warm. But oxygen without hydrogen is incomplete. It cannot form the delicate balance of water again. It becomes a ghost of what was lost, lingering in the sky, heavy but insufficient. Without the seas, without the cycle, oxygen too becomes unstable, eventually combining with rocks and metals, locking itself into the crust. What is left behind is not a breathable paradise, but a barren husk. There is a quiet irony here. Earth, the blue planet, the water world, will one day lose the very element that defined it. To a distant observer, the transformation will be unmistakable. Today, Earth shines in space with a glow of oceans, its colors vibrant against the black. But in the far future, that brilliance will fade. From afar, Earth will resemble Mars or Venus, a dry and silent sphere, its history of oceans betrayed by nothing but scars on the surface. The story of water will no longer be written in waves, but in absence. And yet, even in loss, there is continuity. The hydrogen that drifts into space is not destroyed. It becomes part of the universe again. Perhaps it will someday be pulled into another cloud of gas, another star, another planet. Perhaps it will help create water elsewhere on a world that has not yet been born. In that sense, Earth's oceans do not end. They are recycled into the grand machinery of the cosmos. But for Earth itself, the story is final. The cradle dries. The sanctuary collapses. This vision leaves us with an image both haunting and profound. Earth as a wounded body, bleeding not blood but oceans, its essence scattering into the wind of the Sunday, a planet giving itself away until it is empty, silent and bare. To witness it would be to understand that impermanence is not only human, not only biological, it is planetary, it is cosmic. But as the oceans fade into space, a deeper question rises. Water is not just a substance. It is the medium in which life is born and thrives. To lose the seas is not only to lose blue horizons. It is to lose the possibility of life itself. What becomes of life when its sanctuary disappears? Life began in the sea. That truth is as old as the earth itself. In the warm ancient shallows of a world still cooling from its violent birth, the first fragile strands of chemistry stirred. Amino acids, linked membranes formed, and something that was not quite alive began to breathe in the currents. Over eons, that breath became cells, those cells became colonies, and those colonies became creatures. The ocean cradled them, fed them, taught them how to endure. It was a nursery that never closed its doors. But every nursery becomes a grave when time stretches far enough. The ocean, once the patient guardian of life, becomes the place where life will die. It is not sudden. There is no single day when the last wave crashes or the final fish gasps. The decline is gradual, a fading rhythm. Coral reefs are among the first to falter, their vibrant kingdoms paling into skeletal remains. They are living structures dependent on delicate balances of temperature and chemistry. As the seas warm and acidify, the symbiotic algae that color them abandon their hosts. Without them, reefs bleach, the scaffolds of marine diversity collapsing into silence. Fish follow. Schools that once shimmered like living rainbows fracture and vanish. Migration patterns that were once ancient and predictable dissolve as waters become inhospitable. Species adapted to specific ranges find no sanctuary. Some retreat to cooler depths, but the depths themselves begin to suffocate, stripped of oxygen. Others simply disappear, their genetic stories ending mid-sentence. And then the smallest, the invisible plankton. These tiny drifters, older than mountains, are the unsung architects of Earth's biosphere. They generate much of the planet's oxygen, the very breath in our lungs. Yet plankton too need a stable sea, and when the sea is torn apart by heat, their colonies collapse. Without plankton, food chains crumble from the base upward, leaving nothing for larger creatures to cling to. Imagine standing on a future shoreline, though the word shore no longer fits. The sea that once stretched endlessly has retreated to shallow pools, stagnant and heavy. The smell of salt is gone, replaced by the acrid tang of exposed minerals. The cries of gulls no longer echo above, for there is nothing left for them to hunt. The wind carries dust, not spray. To walk here would be to walk in a cemetery of memory, where each stone is a reminder of what water once held. For billions of years, the sea has been the womb of renewal. Even mass extinctions on land could not fully sever life's tie to the ocean. After asteroids, after volcanic winters, after ice ages, the sea always carried the ember of survival. From that ember, life rekindled. But in this future, there is no ember. The ocean itself is the victim, and with its passing, life's oldest refuge is extinguished. It is almost unbearable to imagine Earth without the sound of waves. That endless rhythm has been the background of the world since before the first land plants lifted their leaves to the air. Even now it is a comfort, the lull of tides, the crash of surf, the whisper of ripples. The ocean's voice is older than human language, older than thought. Its absence would be like the loss of heartbeat in a body. Silence would expand, filling every gap where water once sang. And what of humanity? If descendants remain to witness this long decline, they will feel it not only as science but as mourning. The sea has shaped human imagination as much as biology. Myths rose from it: Poseidon's fury, Leviathan's shadow, the siren's song. Art was born beside it, from cave fish carved into stone to Turner's painted storms. Entire civilizations lived and died at its edge. To lose the ocean is to lose half the story of what it meant to be human. There is an intimacy here, a bond between creature and cradle that makes its dissolution more than geological. It is personal. Every drop of blood in a human body carries the chemistry of seawater. Sodium, potassium, calcium, echoes of the primeval soup. Our veins are rivers that remember the tide. To see the ocean die is to see the mirror of our own mortality stretched across a planet, and yet the ocean's end does not end Earth itself. Rock persists when life fails. Even when waves are gone and shores crumble into dust, the planet spins onward. This is the cruel distinction: life is fragile, but stone endures. To us, oceans are everything, but to the planet they are temporary adornments. The continents will still grind against one another. Mountains will still rise and erode even as the last seas vanish. Life, the miracle we cherished, is only one chapter in Earth's deeper book. Philosophers may ask, what does it mean for life to vanish where it began? Perhaps it means that cycles are not guaranteed. We grow accustomed to the security of returns. The tide that goes out will come back. The sun that sets will rise again. But the ocean does not promise return. It promises change, and eventually it promises disappearance. To cling to permanence is to misunderstand the very substance of water, always flowing, always fleeting. Take a moment to imagine Earth as a dry sphere under a swollen red sky. The blues are gone, greens fade. What remains are browns, greys, ochres, rusts. Without watercolors wither, without life motion ceases. The planet that once glittered with oceans becomes another silent stone, indistinguishable from billions of others. To an outside eye, Earth becomes ordinary. Only memory marks it as extraordinary. This vision might feel unbearably bleak, but within it lies a profound truth. The sea was never ours to keep. It was borrowed, gifted for a time. We live in the middle of its story, not its beginning, not its end. To know that the cradle will one day become a grave is not to despair, but to recognize the fleetingness that makes each wave precious. Every sound of surf, every dive into cold salt, every horizon of blue is a miracle framed by time. In that awareness lies tenderness. To stand at the shore today is to feel eternity condensed into a moment. The ocean that will vanish has not vanished yet. Its voice still speaks, its memory still flows. To listen is to honor the truth that life came from water and will one day return to silence. And yet silence is not the end of Earth's story. When life fades, when the last reef crumbles, and the last tide retreats, the planet does not dissolve. It continues as rock under a reddening sky, a survivor stripped of voices. The death of life's cradle is not the death of Earth. It is the transformation of Earth into something else. The moment the last ocean vanishes, Earth is no longer Earth as we know it. It becomes something alien, a stranger to itself. For billions of years, this planet has been defined by water. From the first photographs taken from space, humanity learned to call it the blue planet, a jewel wrapped in liquid light. Without that shimmer, without the undulating blues that once breathed across its surface, the world begins to resemble something else entirely. It becomes dry, cracked, hollow. It becomes a desert planet. The transformation is not subtle. Oceans are not only scenery, they are regulators. They act as the memory of climate, storing heat in their depths and releasing it slowly, evening out the wildness of temperature. They are the architects of wind, the silent engineers of storms, the unseen hand that turns weather into a living cycle. Remove them, and the balance collapses. Imagine standing at the equator of this new Earth. Once you would have felt a breeze that carried the perfume of salt and the whispers of distant waves. Now the air is heavy with dust, unmoving beneath the glare of a swollen Sunday. Days are unbearable. The ground scalding the air, shimmering with heat. Nights are the opposite, cruelly cold. The warmth of the day bleeding away into space without the oceans to hold it. The pendulum of temperature swings violently day after day, tearing at what little remains of the atmosphere's fragile stability. Dust storms rise where clouds once formed. Without water to seed the sky, there are no rains, no gentle rivers of condensation. Instead, winds whip across the exposed basins of former seas, lifting fine sediments into the air. Entire continents become seas of dust, choking and endless, their currents reshaping landscapes in hours. The familiar hydrological cycle, the rising of vapor, the forming of clouds, the falling of rain, is gone, replaced by a parched rhythm of erosion and decay. In this new world, mountains loom like bones. Valleys once sculpted by rivers stand dry and silent. The scars of the past remain visible. Fossil shorelines, coral reefs, turn to chalk canyons carved by waters that will never return. If any being could walk this land, they would see in every rock the ghost of water's touch, the memory of fluid that once defined the world. It is a planet of relics, a museum of absence. Mars offers a preview of this fate. Scientists who have studied its dry riverbeds and ancient deltas speak of a world that once carried oceans now locked in silence. Earth, stripped of its seas, would resemble that crimson neighbor. The irony is heavy. For centuries, humanity looked to Mars and wondered if it could host life, all while knowing that Earth itself might one day meet the same barren fate. The difference is that Earth's story comes with memory, with a long record of abundance that makes its desolation sting all the more. What does it mean for a world to lose its defining color? The shift is more than physical, it is existential. The blue planet, the cradle of life, becomes brown ochre rust. Seen from space, its shimmer disappears, its glow dims. Where once astronauts gazed down and felt awe at the living ocean beneath them, a future observer would see only a husk indistinguishable from the countless other rocky spheres scattered across the galaxy. What once made Earth extraordinary is erased. And yet there is a strange beauty in this transformation. Deserts have always carried their own kind of majesty, dunes like frozen waves, silence stretching further than imagination, skies so clear the stars seem within reach. A whole planet as desert would magnify this to the extreme. No oceans to block horizons, no forests to soften the wind, just endless stone and sand under a colossal red sky. a planet stripped to its essence bare and unadorned, standing naked in the solar furnace. Philosophically, this image asks us to reflect on fragility. The seas which once felt eternal are shown to be temporary. Climate which seemed reliable is revealed as conditional. Even identity, the very way we name our world, is not fixed. Earth as the blue planet was only a phase. Earth as a desert is another. Perhaps planets like people have multiple lives, shedding old selves until nothing recognizable remains. Take a moment to imagine walking across one of those ancient ocean basins now, a desert plain. Beneath your feet, the ground is littered with fossil shells, the last traces of creatures that once swam where you now stand. Above you, the sun looms larger than you ever imagined, a swollen sphere of fire staining the air with crimson light. The silence is complete. No gulls, no waves, not even the rustle of trees. Only the whisper of wind-moving sand across stone. This is Earth, but it feels like another planet entirely. And perhaps that is the most haunting realization familiarity dissolves. We think of Earth as home as something permanent, but home itself is temporary. To those who once lived here, this desert would be unrecognizable. The forests that fed them, the rivers that guided them, the seas that shaped their myths, all gone. The very essence of place is erased, leaving only geography stripped of story. Earth becomes anonymous, another world among billions. The transformation is not only physical but symbolic. Oceans have always represented renewal. Their tides mirrored time itself, their depths promised mystery, their presence carried life. In their absence, the symbolic landscape shifts. Earth is no longer a place of beginnings but of endings, no longer a cradle but a fossil. To study it in this state would be to study loss itself, to see in every dune the shadow of what once was. And yet even this is not the end. For as barren as Earth becomes, the sun continues to change. The desert planet is only one stage in a larger story. The heat grows, the light swells, and the ground itself begins to warp under the pressure of a star nearing its own death. Earth as desert is haunting, yes, but it is also transitional, a prelude to something far more dramatic. And so the question lingers: if the oceans are gone, if the planet is stripped to stone and sand, what happens when the sun too reaches the last of its breath? The red giant cannot last forever. For all its size, for all its blazing fury, it is still bound by the same laws that govern every star. Its death is not an accident, not a catastrophe that could be avoided, but something written deep in its very core from the moment it was born. To imagine the sun's final days is to imagine inevitability, the slow unwinding of a thread that has been pulling taut for billions of years. Inside the swollen giant, the familiar order of nuclear fire begins to falter. Once hydrogen was the simple and abundant fuel that kept the sun steady fusing, into helium releasing the light that warmed oceans and stirred winds. But hydrogen is finite, and after billions of years it dwindles. When the sun bloated into its red giant form, it turned to helium, pressing those atoms together in its furnace to forge carbon and oxygen. Yet even this second breath cannot last. The star is not massive enough to ignite the heavier elements beyond. Iron, silicon, and the grand ladder of stellar alchemy are forever beyond its reach. The sun is doomed to stop partway, running out of the strength to burn. When this moment arrives, the core contracts. Gravity tightens its grip, pulling inward, while the outer layers, vast shimmering shells of gas, can no longer be held in place. They drift away, not in silence, but in glowing veils that stretch into space, painting a planetary nebula around the dying star. These drifting clouds of gas will glow for a time, lit from within by the last sputters of the core. To a distant observer, Earth's sun will no longer appear as a golden point, but as a fragile flower in the void petals of gas expanding outward in delicate symmetry. And at the heart of this cosmic bloom remains the remnant, the white dwarf. No longer a furnace, no longer a blazing giant, but an ember, dense beyond comprehension, its mass squeezed into a sphere no larger than Earth itself, yet holding nearly all the weight of the star that once commanded the solar system. Its light will be faint, bluish-white, sharp but weak. This is the ghost of the sun, a stellar memory compressed into silence. If Earth has not already been swallowed by the red giant's swollen body, it will continue to orbit this faint remnant. The distance between them will seem immeasurable compared to what once was for the white dwarf, will give little warmth, little light. Where once Earth basked in golden days, it will now linger in shadows, a frozen relic circling a dead star. Oceans are long gone atmosphere, strip the crust cracked and barren. It will be a planet orbiting not a sun but a memory of one. What does it mean then for life's source to become an ember? There is a kind of poetry in it. Stars are often compared to hearts, and in this vision the sun's heart continues to beat but weakly, slowly fading. Each photon that escapes the white dwarf is like a whisper from a voice that once roared across the cosmos. To those who might gaze at it from afar, perhaps from another star system, it would be a subtle reminder that grandeur does not last, but neither does it vanish without leaving behind a trace. There is also humility in this ending. Human beings once imagined their sun eternal. They built myths around its constancy, prayed to it, celebrated its rising and setting as if it were divine. And in a sense it was, for without it no prayer, no myth, no human at all would have existed. Yet here in the quiet glow of a white dwarf, the illusion of eternity dissolves. The sun is not immortal. It is as finite as the creatures who once worshipped it. Its lifespan is longer, yes, stretched across scales we struggle to comprehend, but it is still bounded. Stars too must die. Take a moment to picture the night sky of the far, far future. The great constellations we know today are already scattered by then, the stars drifting into new patterns. But where the sun once burned as the overwhelming center of everything, there is now only a pale blue point, so faint it could be mistaken for an ordinary star. Imagine walking across the desert Earth beneath this sky, looking up and trying to recognize the ghost of the star that once defined your world. That tiny light, weak and cold, is the same sun that once painted oceans gold and warmed the faces of children on summer afternoons. The contrast is almost unbearable, and yet in this collapse there is beauty. The gases drifting outward from the red giant stage may seed the galaxy with elements forged in the sun's heart. Carbon, oxygen, even traces of other heavy atoms, these will spread into space, mingling with clouds of dust, feeding the birth of new stars and planets. In this way, the death of the sun is not simply an ending, but a continuation. Its body becomes part of the larger cosmic cycle. Pieces of it may one day help shape new worlds, new oceans, perhaps even new forms of life. Here lies the paradox. The sun's collapse is both loss and gift. For Earth it is the end. For the galaxy it is nourishment. Stars give and stars take, and in both acts they remain faithful to the universe that bore them. To call the white dwarf an ember is true, but it is also a seed. It is the reminder that death in the cosmos is rarely absolute. For the human imagination, this vision is haunting but strangely comforting. Though our sun will fade, it will not vanish into nothing. It will not collapse into a black hole or explode as a supernova, tearing the system apart in violent fury. Instead, it will slip into silence with grace, shedding its outer garments and leaving behind a glowing memory. The solar system will grow quiet, but the story of the sun will still echo in the stars around it. And so the image settles, a faint white dwarf glowing in the distance, surrounded by the dust of its former self, orbited by shattered planets and silent rocks. Earth, if it endures, circles faithfully, a fossil planet with no breath, no sea, no song. The warmth is gone, but the story lingers. And in that story there is something unexpectedly beautiful, because even in death the sun gives light. And that is the truth whispered by the cosmos itself. Endings do not erase what came before. They transform it. They turn fire into memory, warmth into silence, and silence into something strangely luminous. The red giant's collapse is not the end of the sun's tale, only its most poignant chapter. And as one star completes its life, Another question rises quietly, waiting for us to follow. If beauty exists in the death of a star, what beauty might be found in the death of a world? The sun's last breath will not be silent. It will be luminous. When its time comes to let go, the sun will not collapse into violence the way more massive stars do. There will be no supernova, no catastrophic blast tearing across light years. Instead, it will release its final sigh with grace. The layers it once held tightly, those swirling shells of hydrogen and helium that had cocooned the furnace within, will begin to drift outward. Slowly at first, then with gathering momentum they will peel away, pushed into space by winds of light. What remains behind is the heart, small and dense and white-hot. And around that heart, in an expanding sphere, is its discarded body glowing softly, as though lit from within. To distant eyes, this is the sun's transformation into a planetary nebula, though the name is misleading. It has nothing to do with planets. Astronomers of earlier centuries called them that because through small telescopes these nebulae resembled faint disks like pale worlds hanging in the sky. In truth, they are the husks of stars, stellar ghosts stretching across light years, their gases glowing in colors too delicate for human eyes to fully capture. One day our sun will join this celestial gallery. It will bloom in death, a flower suspended in the void petals of gas, drifting outward into the endless dark. Imagine looking back at the solar system then, from the vantage point of some faraway traveler. Where once there was a brilliant star dominating the sky, now there is a luminous cloud. Tendrils of red, violet, and green shimmer, illuminated by the white dwarf at their center. The Earth, if it still exists, is a frozen stone circling on the edge of this radiance, watching its parent dissolve into dust. Jupiter, Saturn, and the outer planets will drift in this fading glow, their surfaces and rings bathed in ghostly light. The sun, the heart of their lives, will have become an artwork, fragile, temporary, impossibly beautiful. And yet this beauty is not only spectacle, it is chemistry, it is legacy. Within the drifting gases are the elements born in the sun's heart: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen. These are the building blocks of breath and bone of forests and oceans, of every creature that once walked on Earth. They do not vanish when the sun lets them go. They travel outward, mingling with interstellar clouds. They become part of the raw material from which new stars, new planets, and new possibilities of life may emerge. The end of the sun is also the beginning of something else. It is the handing down of a gift. Without this cycle of stellar death and rebirth, the universe would remain sterile, forever locked in hydrogen and helium. Every atom of iron in your blood, every trace of calcium in your bones, every drop of oxygen you breathe, came from a star that died before the sun was born. Our own star will one day return the favor. Its death is not only its own ending, but a contribution to the vast ongoing story of cosmic renewal. To think of the sun's nebula is to think of beauty beyond human scales. The nebula will expand for tens of thousands of years, then fade, becoming too diffuse to glow. The luminous flower in space will eventually dissolve into invisibility. But for a while, in its fragile glory, it will be seen across the galaxy. Somewhere, perhaps a distant civilization might look up with telescopes of their own, noting the gentle glow of a planetary nebula, cataloguing it, naming it, never knowing that it is the funeral veil of a star that once nurtured oceans and forests on a small blue world. There is something haunting in this anonymity. To the cosmos, our sun is one among countless others. Its death is neither special nor unusual. It is ordinary. And yet for us it is everything. The nebula it leaves behind will carry our story within it, even if no one else ever hears it. The dust drifting outward will hold the memory of Earth, the echo of rain on leaves, the shadow of wings over water, the laughter of children in summer light. Those elements once arranged themselves into our lives, and though the arrangement will vanish, the particles will remain. They will scatter into the Milky Way, waiting to be reborn in new forms. Perhaps one day they will rise again in another ocean under another sky, where beings not unlike us will look upward and wonder at the stars. This is the paradox of endings in the universe. They feel absolute, and on one level they are. Oceans gone, skies burned, earth transformed into dust and rock, and yet they are also transitions. The sun's death does not remove it from the universe, it redistributes it. Energy becomes light, matter becomes gas, gas becomes seeds for new creation. The rhythm does not stop, it changes tempo. What feels like silence is simply the beginning of another kind of song. So perhaps the planetary nebula is not a funeral shroud, but a kind of offering. The sun has burned for billions of years, holding together the fragile balance that allowed life to grow. Now in its final act, it gives itself back. It exhales the elements it created, releasing them to wander free, no longer bound to a single orbit or system. The nebula is not just beauty, it is generosity. The colors are not only light, they are the chemistry of possibility. For us, it is almost impossible to imagine this sky. The nebula will not be visible from Earth's surface, not in the way the great Hubble images show them. But from space from afar, the view would be spectacular. Imagine standing on the surface of Pluto in those distant reaches and seeing the nebula span the sky brighter than the Milky Way itself. Imagine watching the petals expand, knowing they are the sun's last words. It is an image of grief and wonder all at once, a reminder that even endings can create awe. And as the nebula fades, the white dwarf at its center will remain glowing faintly for billions more years, cooling slowly, patiently, until even its light disappears. The nebula is the sun's final gesture of brilliance before that long, dim quiet. It is the last burst of color before silence, the final brushstroke on a canvas before the lights go out. This is the ghostly nebula, delicate, radiant, temporary. It is the sun, transformed into a memory large enough to be seen across the galaxy. It is the reminder that death, even cosmic death, can create beauty that lingers, and beyond beauty lies continuity. The sun's nebula will join countless others, a great river of dust and gas flowing through the galaxy. Stars die, but the oceans of the cosmos keep moving, carrying their gifts into the future. And so the story does not stop here, because while stars collapse, the universe still flows. It would be easy to believe that when Earth's seas are gone, water itself vanishes from the story. After all, we live surrounded by blue. From orbit, Earth looks less like rock and more like liquid light, a shimmering sphere of oceans laced with clouds. To imagine it stripped of water is to imagine a world emptied of soul. But the truth is more generous, more strange, more hopeful. Space, despite its vastness, is not dry. In the darkness between stars, oceans wait. We have already found them, though, not in the familiar form of rolling waves against sandy shores. They hide beneath ice, beneath shadows, beneath the silence of alien skies. Take Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. From a distance, it looks unremarkable. A pale sphere crisscrossed with dark scars like veins across frozen skin. But beneath that icy shell kilometers thick lies an ocean deeper than Earth's, vast enough to drown our continents many times over. It churns in darkness, warmed not by sunlight but by the tug and pull of Jupiter's gravity, which kneads the moon like dough and generates heat below. In that unseen sea there may be currents, tides, even volcanic vents, spewing minerals into the abyss. It is a world without a sunlit surface, yet it is alive with possibility. And Europa is not alone. Enceladus, a small moon of Saturn, dazzled us when the Cassini spacecraft flew past and saw geysers erupting from its south pole, plumes of water vapor shooting into space. Those fountains told us that beneath its frozen crust lies another hidden ocean, pressurized enough to break through cracks and spray into the void. Within those geysers, Cassini's instruments detected organic molecules, hints of the chemistry of life. Imagine that a moon barely 500 kilometers wide, carrying within it a sea that could cradle the beginnings of something living. Further still, there is Titan, Saturn's largest moon, where rivers and lakes glimmer on the surface. They are not filled with water, but with methane and ethane liquid under Titan's frigid skies. It is a different kind of ocean, alien and strange, yet still an ocean. All the same. A reminder that liquid in any form is one of the universe's great architects of landscapes. And beneath Titan's icy crust, too, scientists suspect another hidden water ocean lies in wait. Even Pluto, so far from the sun that it seems frozen beyond imagination, shows signs that an underground ocean once flowed and perhaps still lingers. Everywhere we look, water insists on existing. It clings to comets, it hides in craters on the moon. It laces the sands of Mars, frozen in glaciers and buried reservoirs. Our solar system, once thought to be mostly dry beyond Earth, is instead dripping with secrets. The seas of Earth may one day vanish, but the universe carries their reflections everywhere, like echoes of a story repeated on countless worlds. And if this is true nearby, what about the vastness beyond? We have begun to peer at exoplanets, worlds orbiting distant stars, their faint shadows caught as they pass in front of their suns. Among them are planets the size of Earth, some rocky, some swathed in clouds, many lying in the so-called habitable zone where liquid water could pool on the surface. Already we have found candidates that might cradle oceans under alien skies. Some may be water worlds, entire planets covered by endless seas without a single continent to break the surface. On such worlds, the sky would meet the sea in every direction, a globe of blue adrift in the cosmos. The thought is staggering. We once believed oceans were rare, a miracle of Earth's delicate balance. Now we begin to realize they may be common, perhaps even inevitable. Where there is enough gravity to hold an atmosphere, where there is enough heat to melt ice, oceans seem to appear. The universe, in its quiet persistence, writes the language of seas again and again. What does this mean for life? On Earth, water was not just a backdrop, it was the cradle. In its depths, molecules learned to assemble, to replicate, to compete. Life began in liquid, protected from radiation, supplied with chemistry stirred by currents. If this pattern is universal, then oceans elsewhere may also be wombs of creation. Perhaps right now, beneath Europa's ice, or within an exoplanet's sea life is swimming silent, unseen, waiting. It might not look like us. It might be simple, microbial, primitive. Or given time, it might grow, adapt, build complexity, until one day it gazes outward and wonders the same questions we do. This idea does not erase the sorrow of Earth's oceans dying, but it reframes it. If life here fades, life elsewhere may rise. If our seas boil away, others will still glitter under alien suns. The death of our waters is not the end of water, only the end of our chapter in its story. Oceans are not Earth's alone. They belong to the cosmos. They are written into the chemistry of stars and planets, into the collisions of comets, into the dust of nebulae. Wherever hydrogen and oxygen meet under the right conditions, they find each other. And when they do, oceans follow. There is comfort in this. The seas that shaped us may not last, but the idea of the sea is immortal. It is stitched into the fabric of the universe, repeating itself across billions of worlds. We are not the only ocean planet. We are part of a vast archipelago scattered across the galaxy, most of which we may never see, but all of which remind us that we are not isolated in our experience. Still, this realization brings a deeper question. If oceans are everywhere, if life may not be unique, then what does that mean for us? Are we rare, or are we one, among many voices rising from many seas? Do we carry a singular responsibility, or are we part of a chorus we cannot yet hear, too? Know that oceans ripple across the galaxy is to feel both smaller and larger at once. Smaller, because our world is not unique. Larger, because we belong to something wider, something woven into the stars themselves. The thought that Earth's oceans are temporary is sorrowful. The thought that oceans themselves are eternal is wondrous. Somewhere when our seas are gone, others will still be breaking on alien shores. Somewhere waves will still crash. Winds will still whip water into spray. Creatures will still move through currents in search of light or food. The universe keeps the song alive, even if the singers change. And so as we face the truth of our ocean's end, we also face the truth of cosmic abundance. Earth's waters will fade, yes, but water itself is indomitable. It flows across time and space, filling cracks and crevices, appearing wherever the universe gives it room. If we listen closely, the universe whispers to us, not of endings, but of continuity. The sea is bigger than Earth, bigger than us. It is written into the stars and it will outlive us. But this realization leaves one question lingering, one question heavier than all the rest. If oceans are everywhere, if life may be everywhere, what does it mean for us here and now to be the ones who are? The story of oceans is not just about Earth. It is also about us, the creatures who grew from them, who learned to walk on land, who built ships to cross their surfaces, and who now dream of crossing something far larger, the Black Sea of space. When we imagine Earth's waters disappearing, the question arises with a sharpness that cannot be ignored. If the oceans vanish, must humanity vanish too? For most of history, the answer would have been yes. We were bound to this planet, tethered to its rhythms, limited by its resources. The idea of leaving Earth was fantasy, the stuff of myth and poetry. Yet something changed in us. We took small steps, fragile ones, but they were steps nonetheless. A footprint in lunar dust, a machine crawling across the deserts of Mars, a telescope orbiting high enough to glimpse the birthplaces of stars. These were not the works of a species resigned to die where it was born. They were the first echoes of a species testing the waters of escape. The idea is vast, almost unbearable to hold in the mind. What would it mean for us to carry Earth with us piece by piece into the void? Could we preserve fragments of what will be lost the way seeds are saved for future planting, or the way stories are passed from parent to child? Scientists and dreamers alike have considered such things. If the oceans are doomed to boil away under the sun's swollen fire, perhaps we can build new vessels for them. Ships that sail not on water but through vacuum, carrying within them tanks of seawater large enough to hold ecosystems. In those tanks, coral reefs could glow again. Plankton could drift in endless cycles. Fish could glide in slow arcs. And the memory of Earth's seas could remain alive even if far from their birthplace. The vision is extraordinary, but also deeply human. We have always carried our homes with us. Migrants pack food and traditions across mountains. Nomads move with their herds, preserving continuity while shifting place. When Polynesian voyagers set out into the Pacific with only canoes and stars for guidance, they brought with them plants, animals, and knowledge, weaving life into each new island they touched. Could interstellar migration be the next step in this same story? Not across oceans, but across galaxies. We may carry Earth's essence with us, not in bags or canoes, but in engineered habitats, artificial seas sealed inside rotating ships. Drops of the original ocean preserved like relics, sacred in their continuity. Yet there is a strangeness here. If we succeed, what will those future oceans be? They will no longer be Earth's not truly. They will be echoes, transplanted ecosystems shaped by technology and memory. A reef growing under the lights of an artificial sun is not the same as a reef in the shallow tropics. A wave breaking against the hull of a starship is not the same as one breaking against a beach of sand and shells. Will it matter? Or will it be enough simply to remember to preserve something rather than nothing? There is also the question of scale. The ocean is not only water, it is gravity, pressure, circulation, climate. Could these be replicated, or would our artificial seas always feel uncanny, like imitations of something far greater? Some dream of terraforming other planets, reshaping alien worlds into Earth-like havens where true oceans could once again spread beneath a sky. Mars, perhaps, with its valleys carved by ancient rivers, or distant exoplanets already carrying water waiting only for us to arrive. In such visions, we do not simply carry drops of the sea, we rebuild the sea itself. But even if we build, even if we carry, even if we migrate, a deeper truth whispers beneath these possibilities. What we are trying to preserve is not only life, but time. Oceans are the memory of Earth's beginning, the place where we began. To carry them forward is to fight against the ticking clock of impermanence. Migration becomes not just survival but defiance, a refusal to accept that endings must be final. Still, there is a paradox here. Suppose humanity escapes, launches colonies among the stars, fills the galaxy with new homes. Have we escaped extinction or only delayed it? The sun's death is one clock, but the universe holds many others. Stars die, galaxies collide, entropy spreads. We may outrun one ending, but can we outrun all of them? If not the sun, then another star. If not heat, then cold. If not collapse, then decay. Even in dreams of infinite migration, time waits. It waits with the patience of stone, the patience of silence. This does not mean the effort is meaningless. Quite the opposite. To carry even a drop of the ocean forward is to declare that life matters, that memory matters, that continuity matters. Perhaps no species can defeat time, but species can extend their stories, and in those extensions lies beauty. We are temporary, yes, but within our temporariness, we hold the power to create echoes that ripple outward. Imagine a distant future where human descendants, perhaps changed beyond recognition, live around another star. They swim in seas that are partly Earth's, partly new, partly imagined. They tell stories of a blue planet that once was of an ocean that gave birth to thought. In those stories, Earth lives again, carried not in matter but in meaning. The oceans of Earth are doomed, but the idea of the ocean may never die. As long as there are beings to remember beings, to rebuild beings, to long for the sound of waves and the feel of salt air, the ocean will exist in some form. And if those beings are us, or what becomes of us, then our legacy will not be a planet alone, but a scattering of seas across the stars. There is a profound humility in this thought, but also a profound dignity. We may not be eternal, but we may be carriers of eternity, vessels of memory, wanderers who take with us the most precious cargo, the knowledge that water once kissed sand, that life once bloomed in tides, that meaning once rose from waves. And so when we ask if humanity must vanish with the oceans, the answer is not simple. Perhaps we will vanish, perhaps we will not. Perhaps we will change so much in the attempt to escape that we will no longer be recognizable as what we are now. But at least we will have tried. At least we will have looked at the waves and said, "You will not end with us. We will carry you forward." The sun's fire may end us here, but imagination already carries us elsewhere. Perhaps that is the truest form of survival, not mere continuation but transformation. Not bound to earth but still bound to the idea of sea. Humanity is a species of wanderers carrying drops of the original ocean across stars. Drops that are not just water but history, memory, meaning. But even if we escape, the final question still lingers heavy and inevitable. We may preserve seas, we may preserve ourselves, but can we preserve time itself? There is a strange comfort in believing that some things last forever. Oceans, mountains, stars, these seem eternal compared to us, as if they stand outside the reach of time, and yet step far enough into the future, and even they unravel. The seas drain the mountains, erode the stars themselves, die. Deep time is patient, and in its patience it spares nothing. Astronomers speak of an end, not just to worlds, but to all worlds. They describe a universe stretched thin across unfathomable epochs, where galaxies no longer shine and stars no longer burn. This vision has a name: the heat death. It is not a fiery ending, not an explosion or a collapse, but a slow dissolving into silence. A great cooling where every source of warmth, every flame of light, every rhythm of movement is spent. Energy does not vanish. It disperses, thinning like smoke until it can no longer do work. In such a future, the night sky would not sparkle. It would not even be black in the way we know it now. Blackness itself is alive with stars, with galaxies, with the possibility of new suns being born. But in the silence of deep time, there would be no such birth. The raw material for stars would already have been consumed, locked into white dwarfs, neutron stars or black holes. The dark would be emptier than emptiness. And what of oceans? Not just Earth's, but the oceans we imagine scattered across the galaxy, hidden beneath the ice of Europa, or glittering under alien skies on distant exoplanets. Their fate would be no different. As stars fade and planets freeze, even the most defiant seas would stiffen into solid blocks entombed in eternal night. Water, once the restless medium of life, would lie still, silent and unmoving. The music of waves would end, not just on one world, but everywhere. This is more than the death of Earth, more than the death of stars. It is the death of possibility. Without energy to flow, without light to stir, without heat to drive, change, the universe becomes static. And in that stillness, time itself feels tired, as though it has carried its story as far as it could and now lays it down. To think of this is to feel very small and perhaps a little afraid. Our minds are not built to hold scales of billions upon billions of years. We live by rhythms of sunrise and sunset, of seasons of lifetimes that can be counted in decades. To imagine a cosmos so aged that even galaxies are forgotten is to stretch ourselves beyond the familiar, to glimpse something so vast. It feels like staring into the edge of comprehension itself. Yet within that vision of exhaustion, there is something quietly profound. It reveals to us the fragility not only of our own lives, but of life as a concept. It teaches that meaning is not rooted in permanence. For if permanence is impossible, then value must come from the temporary. From the waves while they still break from the stars, while they still shine from the voices, while they are still spoken. Perhaps that is why we find the idea of universal death so haunting. It strips away the illusion that something else, something eternal, might carry on when we do not. But it also sharpens our attention to the now. If the oceans of the universe are destined to freeze, then the fact that ours still churns with life becomes a miracle, almost unbearable in its rarity. If stars are temporary, then every sunrise is a gift drawn from a dwindling treasury. In this way, the silence of deep time is not only a warning, it is also a teacher. It whispers that endings are not failures, they are simply part of the larger rhythm. And just as the sea carries both calm and storm, the universe carries both creation and dissolution. What feels like an ending may only be a change in tempo, a pause in a melody, too vast for us to hear in full. There are those who resist this vision. Physicists and philosophers alike wonder whether heat death is truly final, whether perhaps new physics might awaken in the far future, stirring the cosmos once more. Could black holes evaporating release enough energy to spark new beginnings? Could quantum fluctuations give rise to pockets of order amid the chaos? Or could the universe, like a breath, collapse inward and begin again? No one knows. And perhaps that is the point. The silence of deep time is not meant to be a closed book. It is meant to remind us that even when endings seem inevitable, mystery remains. Even when all things seem destined for stillness, the possibility of surprise persists. And here again we find ourselves circling the same question. Does ending truly mean nothingness? Or does it mean transformation into something we cannot yet imagine? For Earth, the answer is already unfolding. Our oceans will vanish, yes, but their memory may live in us, or in whatever comes after us. For stars, the answer is written in the light we see across the sky, light that began its journey long before we were here to catch it. And for the universe itself, the answer is still hidden, waiting in the far future. All things are temporary, but in their temporariness they carry beauty. The ocean is beautiful not because it will last forever, but because we can stand on the shore today and feel its spray. The stars are beautiful not because they will always shine, but because they shine now. And perhaps the universe itself is beautiful not because it promises eternity, but because it offers this brief, luminous moment in which we exist. When deep time closes in, when silence spreads through the cosmos, what will remain is not water, not light, not even stars. What will remain is the echo of their having been. And if we, fleeting as we are, can carry even a fraction of that echo into awareness, then perhaps we have already answered the question. Ending does not erase meaning, it shapes it. The silence of deep time is vast. But within that silence, the smallest ripple of existence matters. And so we return to the question that lingers heavy. As the tide does, ending truly mean nothingness? There is a strange comfort in endings. They offer a sense of closure, a neat horizon line where the story seems to fold itself away. We are drawn to them in books, in songs, in films, in the very shape of our days, which conclude with the fall of night. Yet when it comes to the universe itself, endings are harder to pin down. The more closely you look, the more you realize that what appears to end rarely disappears. It changes, it shifts, it dissolves into something else. Endings, when viewed through the lens of time and physics, begin to look less like conclusions and more like transformations. Take the oceans. To us, their death feels certain, even cruel. The slow evaporation under an aging sun, the migration of waters into the skies, the loss of hydrogen into the void, step by step, the seas vanish. If we stop the story there, it reads like a tragedy. But the molecules themselves do not mourn. They continue. A hydrogen atom torn from an earthly ocean may one day be drawn into the gravity of a comet drifting between stars. That comet may wander for eons until the tug of some young sun captures it, warming it, melting it, letting its water spill onto alien soil. In that moment, Earth's loss becomes another world's beginning. The same is true for sunlight. We imagine the sun's death as a final extinguishing, as if a lamp is switched off in a dark room. But what the sun leaves behind, the white dwarf glowing faintly, the nebula spreading outward, these are not absences, but new presences. The carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen forged in its heart will scatter, seeding the galaxy. In that scattering lies the possibility of new planets, perhaps even new oceans, perhaps even new forms of life, gazing up at their own sky, wondering where they came from. And what of us? The temptation is to imagine our end as final, a vanishing into silence. But our bodies too are collections of atoms borrowed from the universe. The calcium in our bones was once inside ancient stars. The iron in our blood was hammered in the violence of supernovae. When we die, those atoms do not vanish. They return to soil, to air, to rivers, to clouds. They disperse, and in dispersal they live many other lives. In a very real way, we are already immortal, not as selves, but as matter, as stardust, endlessly recycled. This is the universe's secret. What looks like death is often only rearrangement. A tree falls in a forest, it rots, it feeds the ground, it nourishes another tree. A wave crashes against a cliff, it shatters, it retreats, but the water is not lost. It returns to the sea, then rises into the sky, then falls as rain. Cycles within cycles. Each masking changes continuity, each turning endings into illusions. Even time, which we imagine as a straight arrow aimed at decay, may not be as linear as it feels. Perhaps the universe does dissolve into cold silence. But perhaps too it folds back upon itself, collapsing and rebirthing an infinite tide of expansion and contraction. Or perhaps in the quantum foam where particles appear and vanish with reckless spontaneity, the seeds of new beginnings are always present, waiting to swell into new universes. We cannot know. What matters is that the story is never as simple as a full stop. And so when we say the oceans will die, when we say the sun will die, when we say the universe itself will die, we are only describing changes of form. The water becomes vapor, then plasma, then scattered hydrogen drifting in the dark. The sun becomes a red giant, then a white dwarf, then a whisper of elements in space. The universe itself may become cold and still, but stillness is not nothingness. It is a stage upon which something else may yet emerge. To view endings in this way is not to diminish their weight. There is sadness in the loss of the familiar, in the passing of forms we love. To stand on a shore and imagine the sea gone forever is a grief so deep it defies language. But grief itself is proof of meaning. We mourn because we care. And what we care for, even if it vanishes, leaves an imprint in us, shaping who we are, shaping how we see. That imprint endures even when the form is gone. Perhaps this is why humans have always told stories of cycles of rebirth, of renewal, of eternal return. On some level, we have always sensed that endings are never as final as they appear. The myths of dying and rising gods, the turning of seasons, the rise and fall of civilizations, all whisper the same truth. Transformation masquerades as death. The oceans of Earth may one day fade, but the essence of water, the essence of flow, continues elsewhere. The sun may collapse, but its atoms continue their journey, woven into new stars and new worlds. Even the silence of deep time may not be silence forever. The universe may still be writing chapters we cannot yet imagine. In this way, the universe itself is a book without a final page. It does not close. It continues to draft and redraft, to erase and rewrite, to fold endings into beginnings in ways too vast for us to trace. The death of a star becomes the birth of new matter. The death of an ocean becomes the migration of water to other skies. The death of life as we know it may seed life of another kind elsewhere. The universe is not a tragedy, nor a comedy, nor even a history. It is an unfolding endless in its creativity, boundless in its transformations. And so when we look at our oceans today, their waves, their tides, their salt spray in the air, we might see them not only as fragile, not only as doomed, but as eternal in their essence. This water has been here before us, and it will be here after us, though not in the same form. It is older than the mountains, older than the continents, older than life itself. It has frozen as ice on asteroids, it has boiled as steam in volcanic plumes, it is hidden in comets wandering the galaxy. It will continue in some form long after Earth has spun its last orbit. Endings are illusions, but illusions with purpose. They give us perspective. They remind us that our time is finite and therefore precious. They teach us to see the ocean not as an eternal backdrop, but as a gift lent to us for a while. They teach us to see sunlight not as a constant, but as a rare blaze of warmth in a cold cosmos. They teach us to see our own lives, not as insignificant, but as fleeting miracles in a universe that thrives on transformation. And so as we close this journey, we might say that the end of oceans, the end of stars, the end of time itself is not truly an end at all. It is a passage, a continuation, a transformation. The universe does not stop. It only changes its rhythm. The ocean returns to the sky, the star returns to dust, the universe returns to mystery. And perhaps that is enough, for nothing ever truly dies. The story has carried us across billions of years through seas that rise and vanish, skies that choke with vapor, planets that crumble into deserts, and stars that collapse into ash. We have walked into the silence of deep time, traced the scattering of atoms into the farthest corners of space, and seen the possibility that nothing ever truly dies. And yet, after all of that wandering, we return here to the edge of the sea, to the place where the story first began. The ocean lies before us, as it always has, restless and alive. Waves curl and break upon the sand, retreat and return in rhythms older than language. The horizon stretches outward, blurred where sky and water meet, a reminder that beginnings and endings are always softer than we imagine. The tide moves with the moon's pull, a silent partnership written into the earth's bones. And though we know with the certainty of science that these waters are not eternal tonight, they are. They shimmer beneath the sun's light. They breathe against the shore. They hold the weight of life within them. The future may be written in equations of heat and entropy, but the present writes itself in salt air and gentle tides. The act of circling back is not just poetic, it is necessary. Stories demand returns. The journey outward must always be balanced by the journey home. And home for Earth has always been water. It was here in shallow pools warmed by volcanic fire that molecules first touched in the dance that became life. It was here in the protective embrace of oceans that creatures first stirred, first swam, first breathed. It was here, in the vast unbroken blue, that ecosystems wove themselves into symphonies of coral, kelp, plankton, and whale. The sea has never only been a backdrop. It has been the stage, the script, the actor, and the audience. To imagine its loss is to imagine the silence of a song that has always been playing. But silence is not yet upon us. Not here, not now. For us, the ocean is still alive, still immense, still carrying the pulse of tides that guided the very evolution of our species. We stand at its edge with the knowledge of its impermanence, but we also stand in the joy of its presence. Gratitude blooms in that tension, the awareness of fragility making every wave more precious. Look closely. The water is not abstract. It is not just numbers on a cosmic timescale. It is the foam lapping over your toes, cool and fleeting. It is the spray that mists your skin when the surf collides with rock. It is the salt taste on your lips when you dive beneath the surface. It is the shimmer of moonlight scattered across ripples, the reflection of stars trembling in dark currents, the sound of waves folding into themselves in endless conversation. These details are not small, they are everything. They are the proof that though endings await, the story is still being lived. Science teaches us to see forward, to calculate the fates of stars, to model the collapse of systems, to trace the arrow of time until it fades into stillness. But science also teaches us to see deeply into the present, to understand that the glass of water on the table is ancient, that the molecules inside it once drifted through clouds, once froze in glaciers, once circled the equator as rain. Every sip is a communion with history. Every wave that crashes onto the shore is older than mountains, older than continents, older than the language we use to name it. The ocean is both fleeting and eternal, fragile and indestructible, doomed and timeless. This paradox is not something to resolve, it is something to hold, something to live inside of. Because we too are paradoxes. We know our lives are finite, yet we live as though time stretches beyond us. We build, we love, we dream, we sing, even while knowing the song will end. Perhaps this is the truest wisdom the ocean gives us, that the inevitability of endings does not diminish the beauty of beginnings or the weight of the present. So let us stand here at the edge of the sea and see it clearly. Let us hear its voice, patient and insistent, reminding us that life is a rhythm, not a permanence. Let us breathe its air heavy with salt and memory, and remember that we are part of this ocean, carried within it, shaped by it, sustained by it. The water in our blood, in our cells, in our very tears, once belonged to the sea. In a real and physical sense, the ocean has never left us, and it never will. Even when it withdraws into the sky, into space, into stars, it will continue flowing through us in forms we cannot yet imagine. And so the story closes, not with fear, but with gratitude. Gratitude that the oceans are still here, still singing, still alive beneath the Sunday. Gratitude that we have had the chance to walk upon their shores, to sail their waves, to breathe the air they give us, to learn from their endless patience. Gratitude that though the future may be written in silence, the present is written in sound. The sound of tides rolling in and out, the sound of water colliding with stone, the sound of a cradle that still rocks us. The horizon glows with light. The sea stretches outward, the earth spins beneath stars that will one day die. But tonight, here and now, the ocean breathes, and so do we. The story is not finished, because stories never are. They bend, they shift, they transform, but they do not end. And as the last wave retreats into the body of the sea, carrying grains of sand, with it carrying echoes of all that has been, we return too. Back to the beginning. Back to the shore. Back to the ocean that made us, that still holds us, that will always in some form endure. And so we close softly with gratitude, not for what will be lost, but for what is still here. The sun will die. The oceans will fade. Yet this truth is not tragedy, but part of a larger rhythm. Stars are born, they shine, they burn out. Planets form, flourish, and wither. Oceans rise, evaporate, and drift into space. And through it all, the universe continues its endless cycle of creation and dissolution. For Earth, the journey is delicate. The sun's growing heat will slowly unravel the seas, turning blue into brown, lush into barren. The oceans, once wombs of life, will return their waters to the sky and then to the stars. Life will shrink back into silence. And yet from the ashes of this transformation, new worlds will inherit the scattered elements. New oceans may form, new suns may glow. Even humanity, fragile as it is, may play a role. Perhaps one day people will wander among distant planets carrying fragments of Earth's sea, seeking to plant life where it can bloom again. The story does not end with loss. It unfolds into migration, into continuity, into possibility. And so the fading of the oceans is not a vanishing but a whisper into eternity. The water that once lapped against shores may someday fall as alien rain on another world. Nothing is lost. Everything transforms. So tonight, as waves still move under the sun's soft gaze, take a moment. Breathe the salt air. Listen to the rhythm of water. Let it remind you that life is precious, because it is temporary, and beautiful because it is fragile. And now, rest with the sound of oceans still alive while they last. Sleep well. The oceans are still here tonight.